Welcome to this session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Meera and I'm delighted to be here second time around promoting the Girls in ICT initiative. I'm thrilled to be having a discussion about technology with Iffat Gill, who is also sharing this platform with me a second time around. Iffat was interviewed previously by the wonderful Branda Budo from ITU. We will be adding a link to the first interview in the description below. This interview builds on the first and is a part 2 deep dive into Iffat's career journey. She is an experienced international activist, a digital strategist and social entrepreneur working on gender equality and the economic empowerment of women through digital inclusion. Firstly, I'd like to explain what Talking Tech is. Talking Tech is a series celebrating girls and women in tech being recorded around the world. It was held on the 23rd of April this year, and the main objective is to create a global environment which encourages women to consider studies in information and communication technologies. The Talking Tech series is organized by the ITU, a UN specialized agency for information and communication technologies, the UNICC, and is in support of the Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age. The goals of these series include to inspire girls and younger women with information about a range of potential ICT careers, to present some of the role model women, such as Iffat, in technology, and share information about their career paths, to offer diverse examples of how ICT is being used to support the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals and other UN goals, to showcase initiatives that are working with girls to support them in ICT studies or future ICT careers, to provide girls with a leadership opportunity to promote and showcase a Girls in Tech organization they may be involved with. To kick this session off, I'm going to introduce you to Iffat. She's a lady with many strings to her bow, with 2 decades of experience in the non-profit sector and social innovation. Iffat founded Chunri Chupal as a training initiative for the social and economic empowerment of women, primarily in Pakistan. She has also delivered multiple keynote speeches at prestigious Women in Technology forums, such as the Grace Hopper event and Ada Lovelace Festival. Iffat is the founder and CEO of The Code to Change, a company which helps to bridge the gender and e-skills gap in the technology sector, and she has some exciting new advances which she'll be sharing with us today. Iffat, it's such a pleasure to be interviewing you. I know you were born in Libya, grew up in Malta, and moved to Pakistan, which is your paternal home, and now living and working in the Netherlands. Can you tell us a little bit about this and how this has influenced your life and career, especially when you moved to Pakistan from Europe in your pre-teens?
Yes, so I moved to Pakistan from Europe when I was just preparing to go to university. And an incident that happened in that time period is actually what shaped my career journey. As I was preparing to go to university, I would leave in the morning, and one of the young ladies from the neighborhood where we were living walked up to me one day and she said, "Where do you go every day? You're all dressed up and sometimes, you have lipstick on. Where do you go every day?" And for me, this was a young girl about my age who never had the opportunity to have access to education, full stop. And for me, to be faced with that question at that age really woke me up to my own privilege of how my reality was completely different to this young girl who was exactly my age. And it got me thinking about the inequalities around us. And this is what triggered my journey that I'm continuing to this day. I took the initiative to understand more about what these young girls in my neighborhood were, what their challenges were, and what they were doing. And I started my first skill center to actually help them build on their existing skills and to give them access to markets so that they can sell the handicrafts that they were making. Fast forward to a few years later, of course, as my work and my project became known to other parts of the country, young people, young women who did have access to education, they started coming up to me to ask for a skill center, which would help them have access to jobs. And the specific challenge that I was faced with after that was that these girls, as more and more jobs were becoming available online, they did not have the skills, the digital skills to be more specific, to actually take advantage of the opportunities that were available to them. So then I started my second center, which was the Community Technology Center for Women. And this is what led to me starting this organization, Children Chupal, and later on the Code to Change. And just to give you a bit of background why this was necessary in a country like Pakistan, because at that point, and this was between 2008 and 2010, I had access to internet, of course, and I was already using technology to look into how we can leverage the existing ICT tools, information and communication tools, to improve the lives of communities that I was working with. And I've always worked with underrepresented and disadvantaged groups. And the biggest chunk of that is, of course, women. So as I was researching into how can we leverage that technology to improve the lives of these women, this is where we found out what the gaps were and what the challenges were for these women to have access. And one of the biggest challenge was that in terms of capacity building, there was no opportunity for these women to go and learn those skills. The traditional internet cafes were not a safe space for these women to go and learn. Those had a very different purpose in those days. And also, there was no dedicated program or instructor who could teach them. This is why we started this center to actually start building the capacity of these young women. And I think looking back, if those young girls didn't come up to me and ask me those questions, I wouldn't be here and my work wouldn't be where it is now.
I think that's really wonderful. It's something that's really fascinated me in terms of how you've helped to create opportunities for these women and inspire them to then take on those skills and empower them economically, as you mentioned earlier on. So obviously you've been working on this for a decade, and the situation with the gender digital gap has evolved. Have we solved it all? You know, I'm keen to understand what the statistics on this is now and what actually needs to be done going forwards.
I wish that it was solved. It's not. I think many of us are aware of that. The gap, the gender gap in the workforce of G20 countries, it's still 26%, and it's much, much higher in lower income nations. Globally, over 2.7 billion women are legally restricted from having the same choice of jobs as men. And in some economies, husbands can actually still legally prevent their wives from working. And economic opportunities for women are extremely limited in countries of the global south. If we look at some of the numbers in deep tech, only 12% of professionals in cloud computing globally are women, and 15% in engineering, and 20% in data and artificial intelligence. And I think I'll come back to this later on why this is important that we address this. Part of the reason I started this was I always advocated for inclusion of women, because I said, if we are really serious about achieving gender equality, I feel that the path to it is through economic empowerment of women. We need to include them, and we need to empower them economically. We need to include them in the workforce, and the digital technology is going to be a catalyst to help us fast track that, because the biggest bulk of opportunities now are in the digital sector, which is why I firmly believe that we need to really focus on building the capacity of disadvantaged groups in digital skills so that they can actually succeed in the workplace. So to answer your question, no, we're not nearly there. We have so much more to do.
Absolutely. It sounds like we have moved forward, but there is still so much more to be done. So that moves me on to my next question. You moved to the Netherlands in 2011 and started another organization. You mentioned the Code to Change, which addresses the e-skills gap in the technology sector across Europe. One would think that access to technology or connectivity or skills, for that matter, is not a big issue, but your work in Europe seems to have highlighted that. What led you to that?
This actually came as a surprise to myself as well. When I moved to the Netherlands in 2011, I was very busy advocating for what needs to happen in the global south and how we need to empower those women in global south, especially through digital skills, and how this is really the fast track path to help them move into the 21st century. As I was going to public forums to speak about the issue, I found out through the audience, and this is again some of these women, especially from the refugee and migrant backgrounds, who came up to me after the event and said, why don't you teach us these skills? And to me, that request or that question was again mind-blowing, because I was not aware of gender gap at that point in the European landscape. So as I researched into it, I found out that there is a big demographic within Europe. And I think our focus was on two major groups, which led to the formation of Code to Change. There were two major groups that were suffering because of the technological advancements, which were really fast. One group was that dropped out of the workforce for personal reasons, for care responsibilities, for whatever reasons, and now they were trying to get back into workforce after a gap. And the second group was professional women who were already in the workforce, but they were trying to make a step into a more tech-oriented roles. While there were a lot of opportunities online to learn and to build your skills, but when you're starting in a new field, the challenge is you don't always know where to start. It's quite overwhelming, which is why we designed this program. It was to give them an into the technology sector. It gave them an opportunity to have a look at the number of opportunities that the technology sector offered and have access to the professionals directly, be it mentoring or advice, who could tell them how to build on their existing skill set. We all have skills. Let's understand that. And then given the opportunities that are available, how can I get to where I want to get in the technology sector? I think many of us can really take advantage if there is a possibility of a trusted advisor who can actually look with you and help you carve that path, whether it's the learning path or the career path, so that you can get that boost to get to where you want to get. So this is what Code to Change did. We built their technical skills in the first phase, then we paired them with an IT professional from the industry, from our partner companies, whom they would work with for a period of 6 months and build their skills and their network so that they can actually have bigger chance of succeeding. So this is what triggered originally my work in Europe. This program started in 2015. And when we opened the call for applications, we were surprised at the number of interest that we got from outside Netherlands as well, which is why then we started looking into possibilities of scaling it to other countries and not just European countries, but again, back into global south as well. We're now also working in countries like Pakistan, and of course, because of COVID-19, we had to adjust our methodology a bit in how we deliver the trainings that we give. And it has been a switch between in-person to online trainings, which originally we decided against because we thought it's very important for these people to come together. They're all in the same boat. They're all in the same situation. They're all starting afresh. And they could really make use of this sense of this community, this network where they can talk to, they can share experiences, they can teach each other. So in-person trainings and boot camps were and are still integral part of the methodology. But because of COVID-19, we actually had to switch to online programs, which of course has its advantages and disadvantages. What happened was, of course, it limits us to reach only the people who already have access to technology and a stable internet connection, of course. But at the same time, because they're online, it costs us less to reach more people, so we could reach more people. Our recent project, for example, under the banner of Code to Change Pakistan, for example, it's training 200 teachers from Punjab region, and the results that we've received are marvelous. They're already joining the online freelancing markets. They're already earning through some of the programs. And I don't know how this will evolve, because we plan to keep on expanding and keep on scaling the program to more and more people, but we're still kind of restructuring everything because of the COVID-19 situation.
That sounds really interesting. I really like the whole story that you tell, from where you started off building the first skills center in Pakistan for women, helping them with their embroidery skills, for example. And then you went on to build out Chunri Chupal, and now the Code to Change is the new initiative that's come up out of this. It's really fascinating, and it's really nice to see that continuity, I think, in terms of technology. And despite the restrictions we have around COVID, that you guys have still kept on training all these people and expanding it out to the Punjab as well. So this then brings me on to my next question. You've been a strong advocate for building skills of underrepresented communities, especially women, with emerging technologies like deep tech being at the forefront of your mind. Can you tell us about the artificial intelligence venture you're part of?
Yes, that's my latest obsession. I would call myself an AI enthusiast and a student. So, of course, as a social innovator, my job is to see how can this emerging technology help us solve social problems. It's all about social impact projects for me. So I started looking into AI, of course. One of the challenges that we saw when we were training our people, especially in the emerging economies, these women, their challenges are many. One that includes, the cultural and social barriers where they're not allowed to go outside of their house to work. So that here, digital technology and working from home really has, worked in their advantage. However, despite being very talented, we do see that in our batch of graduates that are trying to get work online, we do see some of the challenges of them having access to quality work. So this new initiative that I'm working on, it's an AI-powered platform which has two goals, basically. A, it's going to give those women that we are training opportunity to have access to decent work and decent pay, which is very important if we are talking about economic empowerment of women. And at the same time, if we look at the number of female founders globally, we're not doing so well again. So we decided to combine these two groups again through this platform. There are many entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs from the female gender who are trying to get their business off the ground. And they are, because of funding, because of resources, they do not have access to quality talent. And what this platform will do is give them access to this talent so that they can focus on building their ideas into successful startups. So this is what we are going to try and achieve through this platform, this AI-powered platform. And I think, Meera, you and I were talking about the developments, and I think I want to share here what some of the new developments are.
Are there any new technologies that you have to share?
Oh, definitely. I think one of the ones that I'm really intrigued by these days, which is being described as one of the most interesting and important AI systems ever produced, it was launched in July 2020, is the GPT-3, the Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3, which is an autoregressive language model, and it uses deep learning to produce human-like text. And it is said that it can generate computer code, poetry, and as well as prose. So we can use this technology now, actually, I think, to even write novels. And I think this is really interesting for me as an AI student to see how these technologies will shape how we are learning and how we are working. Because, if it's taking care of a lot of our challenges, it can generate content, it can generate code if we're lucky. I think these kind of technologies are really important to keep an eye on. And also in terms of the kind of programs that we are developing, and our boot camp relies on teaching you how to code. And I think with technologies like this is going to be really interesting.
So Iffat, let me ask you, with GPT-3 tech emerging, this will impact our current focus on developing tools. Do you think we won't need your coding program anymore?
My God, Meera. Not just yet, but who knows? But I think that's the beauty of being in this field, in the field of social innovation. Then we're going to have to see how we are going to adapt and adopt and be flexible, how we're going to use this to move forward. I think that's very important. And I do like your question. I love it. But not just yet, Meera. We're not closing shop just yet.
Brilliant. That's reassuring then. I'd love to hear more from Code to Change, as I'm sure that you have so much more to accomplish. So obviously sort of AI is a new and growing field and still evolving. How do we find out more about AI? I'd certainly sort of be up for finding out a lot more about AI and getting involved. Do you have any tips?
Definitely. And it all depends on the goal that you're trying to achieve. Do you want to start working with the technology itself, or do you want to look at the AI and ethics point of view of what these technologies are capable of and how much they're going to take over our lives? Or do you want to manage projects? And based on that, then you need to see what is the goal that you're trying to achieve, and what you want to learn then will be based on the goal that you want to achieve. Of course, there are a lot of courses. There are actually a lot of countries are now introducing their own AI courses. For example, Netherlands has started one, even Pakistan has started one, the Presidential Initiative on AI. They've started a program. Major companies like Google, for example, have programs on AI that are available online that you can actually look into to see, just to get the lay of the land. And if you want to look more into the GPT-3 that I mentioned, it's being created by OpenAI. So definitely take a look at the OpenAI website. And there are always a lot of YouTube videos on this topic as well to tell you what it's doing and what it's capable of, if you're interested, Meera.
Absolutely. That sounds like a whole host of useful resources. So thank you so much for that, Iffat. I'll definitely be tapping into that. And this now brings me on to my final question for you. You come from a Southeast Asian background. Your father was very progressive, but you were surrounded by a community of people that didn't necessarily understand the work you were doing. How did you overcome those challenges?
How sweet of you to end on that, Meera. Thank you. Yes, of course. When you are doing something that at that point, it's way ahead of its time and nobody really understands it. Like I would be talking about the work I do and how to leverage ICTs for, social impact. People would be asking me, "Oh, wow, so you work with internet. Do you know how to build a website?" So I was actually shamed into learning how to build websites because that's all they knew. That's all they wanted us, to get supported with. But in terms of personal challenges, yes, definitely. Being a young woman who is making progress in her career, that doesn't always sit well with everybody, especially when it comes to, in Southeast Asian families, there comes a time when they say, okay, the clock is ticking. Are you going to choose who you want to marry? In my case, or shall we do that for you? I was lucky that I was given the choice. So I took, the best option. I said, you know what, I got this. Let me sort this out. But it didn't come without challenges, of course. And what helped me get through this phase was, I think, having strong allies within the family, especially male allies, whom you can talk to and whom you can explain about your wishes and what you want to achieve in life. And that, for me, in my case, really, really helped me. And I think for the other young women who are going through that phase, yes, I think first having a clear strategy in your head about where you want to go. And I know that when you're young, it's not always easy, but we all know, we all have hopes and dreams. And I think to have that, and then to see how can we align that with our reality, with our social and cultural realities, how can we survive within that system? I think it's a whole different subject. I would love to have another a session on just that, I think, but yeah, it for me, having that network of support really helped.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and it's really inspiring to see how you've really sort of, overcome that challenge and sort of made some changes and actually created opportunities for yourself as well. That for me is really inspiring. And obviously moving to the Netherlands, were there any barriers being a woman of color?
Definitely. I mean, when I first started in the Netherlands, what helped me was that I had the digital skills to kind of convince the people that I was speaking to the stakeholders that I was trying to bring on board, is that case study of myself, that, okay, this is my skill set, this is how I built my skill, and this is how I think others can do it as well. Coming with that story really helped me bring on board corporate partners without whom this wouldn't have been a reality. So definitely being a woman of color in the current landscape, it is not without challenges. And again, I think we need to start building our own network of support group and allies who believe in your cause, who believe in your mission, and who know that this is the right thing to do. It's about time, and we're actually quite late. There's no better time than now to actually get on board with this whole debate on both gender equality and inclusion and diversity, especially in the workplace.
Absolutely. That's been really exciting and interesting to hear all your thoughts and views, Iffat. Thank you so much. And that concludes my questions to you. Do you have any questions that you may want to ask me?
Definitely, Meera. Being very focused on the skills in my work, I think I would want to know from you, Meera, what was the most important skill set for you that was really pivotal for your career? And it could be a skill that you learned or you have, but I would love to know about that.
For me, it was my interpersonal or communication skills. I'm told that I connect with people fairly easily, and I'd like to think that's true. I think that coupled with hard work has really, really helped set me in good stead. You know, building positive relations with people, it's really helped build that trust with colleagues and peers in the workplace. And I've also been sort of fortunate enough to land good career prospects just sort of through being able to communicate properly with others. And it's also helped to grow me as a person. I think technologists are usually seen as non-communicators or, they usually shy away and work at the computers. But I think having the skill of communication and being able to connect with people has really set me apart in the way of being the sort of face of key communications in the workplace, and kind of expanded my role from being the test analyst to sort of doing other things outside the scope of a tester, which has been really useful.
Amazing. So Meera, you and I have been talking, and I know that you're on a career break right now. And I also think that it's very important to sometimes sit back, take that time for yourself, sit back and say, okay, where am I going to go now? What am I going to do next? And then, yes, I know not a lot of us have that privilege to be able to do that, but it is a very important thing, I think, in my opinion, to have go through that. So in the light of that, I'm very interested to know, what are you currently working on, and how would you define this process of going through this and then getting to where you want to get?
That's correct. So obviously I used to work as a software tester at an investment bank, just to give you a bit of background, and due to a restructure, my role was made redundant. I generally don't see setbacks as something that sort of should stop and, hold you back. I kind of saw this as a really good opportunity to kind of stop and take stock of how far I'd come in my career. I'd been working at the bank for 10 years and didn't really have an opportunity to actually stop and look at where I'd come from, what I'd achieved in the last 10 years, and actually where I really wanted to go in the next few years, or where I want to go. So this has been a really good time to actually just, focus on what my values are, what my achievements have been, and what key skills I want to sort of add and go forward and grow in my career. I've been involved in a number of things. I guess sort of firstly, having been made redundant, I was fortunate enough to go traveling just before the UK lockdown set in. Traveling is one of my passions, and that was really nice to be able to do that. And then I've been working on setting up a blog, understanding the concepts of search engine optimization, marketing and sales. It's kind of made me look at, obviously everyone's been cooking in lockdown, and I really enjoy cooking. I find it quite therapeutic and creative. And it's really made me think about coming up with a cookbook, a family cookbook, sort of looking at traditional recipes passed on from our parents' generation, and all the modern recipes that we're devising now from all family members, and come up with a cookbook that we can pass on to the next generation. So it's been really nice to sort of spend some time on personal projects such as these. I'm currently still obviously out of work, but I've been spending my time as a volunteer at Toastmasters. It's an international non-profit organization. It focuses on public speaking and leadership. I'm currently working as an area director, which means I get to manage multiple clubs and the executive committee teams that lead those clubs. It's been so exciting. I think the analogy that we use at Toastmasters as an area director is, imagine being the CEO of your own company, and how would you manage it? So I can completely resonate with all the things that you've talked about, and the challenges that you've been through and how you've overcome them. I think just sort of doing this role has really helped me improve my confidence in public speaking. It's got me thinking about other projects that I might want to pursue purely through communications, setting up podcasts, etc. in the future. I've learned how to facilitate and present training sessions to large groups of people, coming up with strategies to improve the club's successes, and actually inspiring other leaders to step into their own confidence, which has been really nice to see, and nice to see people evolving. I truly believe that a strong leader is a good good communicator. And I think this has sort of really helped pull everything together. I've also been involved with some data themed IT projects. It's just sort of something that I've taken on in the last few weeks, and it's kicking off. So there's a lot of prospects with that, and I hope that that brings a lot of new opportunities for me going forward.
My God, Meera, and all this is something you're doing when you're not working, so while you're on a break. And
yeah, it's felt like a full-time job without being in a job, but it's been really useful. I think I tend not to focus on being lazy. You know, it's nice to stop and relax and have a break, but I like to get my hands dirty and get involved in things. So this has been really nice, and actually just nice to see that, you know, once you start creating those opportunities, that so many more will come your way and sort of pave your path for the future. So I'll just keep going until then.
amazing. This was lovely.
Thank you. So I think that wraps up our session for Talking Tech today, Women and Girls in ICT. Thank you so much, Iffat. It's been a real delight to have you here, and I really enjoyed our chat today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much.